You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
I'm looking forward to breaking down the cheat sheet that the American Council on Exercise just gave on when they believe you should be doing your cardiovascular work. That means your treadmill, your elliptical, your bike, your Peloton, your rowing machine, whatever it is that you're using. Should you be doing it away from weight training days? Should you be doing it on weight training days? If you do it on weight training days, should it be before your weights or after your weights? We're going to break down what they shared with you, and I'll give you my opinion as someone who's been in the industry for quite some time now, if I agree in the real world. So believe it or not, the American Council of Exercise, or the American Council on Exercise, is still one of the top organizations. Now, when I was going to get my personal training certification way back in the day, back in the late 90s, I actually got certified through the American Council on Exercise. It was my very first personal training certification. Fun little fact there. After that, I went on to study under the National Strength and Conditioning Association with the CSCS, look into the ACSM, did the National Academy of Sports Medicine, just continued to, I wouldn't just say accumulate certifications, although that's what it might seem like, but really accumulate knowledge. It's what I talk to people and really tell people about all the time. I work with a lot of naturopathic doctors, and they say, oh, well, I already went through, school. I'm not reading. I'm like, because I always ask, what are you reading right now? Like, what are you studying? What are you looking at? They're like, well, I've already did my schooling. Well, no, you haven't. You're not done yet. Meaning, yes, you learned a lot of great things, but you're not done yet. And it should be like that in any profession. So if you're a health coach out there right now, if you're someone, it doesn't matter the field that you're in. You could be a hairstylist, you could be an attorney, whatever it is. Just continue to work on your craft. No doubt about it. Huge believer in that. Not only will it make you better for the people you serve, but you'll be more excited to go out there and continue practicing because of all the new things you're learning. That's a big part of why I still continue to do 1 hour a day of just my own continued education. All right, let's get back on track though. So American Council on Exercise, I always want to say of exercise, but on exercise, ACE for short. The first one they say is this. Okay, so if we're looking at how best to structure our workouts, and there is more than one way, but I agree with a bunch of these and I wanted to bring them to you. So they said this: if your goal is better endurance, do cardio first. And that is because there are multiple studies that show if you do weight training before your cardio will suffer. Now, when I talk about cardio, again, I'm talking about going for a jog, a run, a bike, anything cardiovascular based, meaning your heart and lungs, okay? So typically, if you're untrained, yes, your legs will give out first, no doubt about it. You'll get shin splints, et cetera, et cetera. But once you're trained, really your heart and lungs are what's working and probably going to give out before your actual body if you're doing endurance-based work. So what happens is if you fatigue the muscles, well, that could be a limiting factor in your endurance work. So if you're someone that's training for a triathlon or a marathon or some type of endurance-based event, yeah, you may actually, and if that's more important, if that's more of a priority, because today we're talking about priorities, okay? So it's all about you're setting your priorities for your exercise. If your priorities, I've worked with marathoners before, I've worked with half marathoners and Ironman athletes, etc., then you're going to prioritize for sure your endurance, at least on your endurance-based days. So that makes sense, no doubt about it, because there's a lot of people say always do your cardio after your weight training. Well, not necessarily the case if your sport or your priority is training for a longer distance event. So totally agree with the American Council on Exercise there. Number 1 out of 6 is a go. All right, number 2 is this. If your goal is burning fat and losing weight, do strength training first. Again, I agree with this. And here's why. There are some really good studies. I did one on a previous Training Thursday show before, that if you do your strength training first, you will most likely be in more of that fat burning zone faster. Okay, here's what that means. Fat burning zone is simply your body's ability to get your heart rate to around 120 beats per minute or so if we're doing steady state. I'll get to intervals in just a moment. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it means that you already went through maybe a 20-minute workout, 30-minute workout, and now you go to do cardio, your heart rate's already elevated. You're already there. You're going to start tapping into more body fat without as long of a warm-up, potentially. Now, again, how long would it really take you to get there? Maybe 5 minutes or so. I mean, that's so not a whole long time. So I don't love that argument. Let's make this a little bit more scientific. What the studies actually show is that if you do interval training at the end of your workout, after your weight training, you'll actually boost your metabolism to a far greater degree. There's more EPOC, there's more metabolic disturbance. So you will, most likely, most individuals burn more body fat over the course, not necessarily that day, but over the course of the next 24 to 36 hours. Because again, you left your workout on a intense note, which is what your body then remembers. It doesn't have all that time to kind of cool down. So that's a big point. Again, I went over the science behind this on a previous podcast. I agree. But most notably, what I would say is the strength training allows you to start to do the work, which gives you the longer term results by building that lean muscle. That's so important, right? So important that we work on our metabolism in the long run. And I went over this just a couple of weeks ago. So episode 1406. All right, it's right there. Aerobic training helps obese people lose more body fat in the short term, right? So again, I want to stay unbiased. And if you do aerobic training, you will lose more body fat in the short term. Unfortunately, in the long term, we're talking about over 6 months to year plus in, you start to lose some muscle. That's not good for your long-term metabolism. And also, again, you're not doing the opposite, building the muscle with the weight training at the same time. So the nice thing is there's a place for both, and I can't recommend enough 3 days a week, ideally, 3 days a week of strength training. You can do more, but 3 days a week. Okay, number 3 is this. If you want to get stronger, do strength training first. Yes, absolutely agree. Now, let's go back to the second one just for a moment. So I agree with the second one, but there's there's a caveat. So that means, yes, strength training absolutely to actually start to build that lean muscle. And then the cardio afterwards, but the cardio can be and probably should be interval-based training if you're really looking to boost that metabolism. Okay, number 3, if you want to get stronger, do strength training first. Absolutely. Same thing as the endurance, right? So if your event is to become a better runner, you should run first, okay? Or bike first. It will absolutely help you. Sport specifics does help. Like, there's no doubt about it. I mean, just a great example is this. Lance Armstrong. I mean, again, say what you will. I mean, it's a sport that's fairly corrupt. He was not the only one using PEDs. But here's the thing. When he went to run a marathon, he wasn't running that in 2 hours. He wasn't even running it under 3 hours. So you have to understand, the best cyclist in the world, that doesn't necessarily translate over to the best runner as well. So keep in mind, sport specific does matter. If you want to get stronger, absolutely do your strength training first while you're most fresh. The same goes for endurance. So totally agree. Number 4 is this. On upper body strength training days, you can do either first. Okay, so here's what it means. If you're just training your upper body, let's just say you're doing a bench press, you're doing pull-ups, etc., you can do your cardio first or your strength training first. I disagree. I disagree with this one. It's probably one of the only ones that I do. Here's why. If you are training anaerobically, that means if you're training with weights and you're going to failure within 8 reps, 10 reps, 12 reps, 15 reps, etc., you're building up lactic acid in the body. So that's a detriment to the body. That actually starts to play with the pH of the body. You need to then buffer that. So your body actually has to buffer that lactic acid. It's acid. The word acid is right there. It has a lower pH. Your body has to buffer that, like I said, with essentially, it really does make its own bicarb. It makes its own bicarbonate solution. So for example, and I always do this with my daughters, they think it's the greatest thing in the world. If we make a volcano at home, we put in the apple cider vinegar first, and then we'll add baking soda, and it makes this big eruption, right? Well, that's what it is. It's acid. Apple cider vinegar is acidic. It's at least acidic as you're putting it into your body, and then you could make the argument that it becomes more alkaline because of the potassium and other minerals in it that hits the tissues. But anyway, it's acid in its own course, just like lemon is acid, and then when it comes into the body, it can be more alkaline because of the mineral salts. But I digress. Let's go back a minute. So what happens is if you add bicarb, which is a high pH, to the low acid, it makes this eruption, right? So that's what our body has to do. It has to buffer all of this acidity. We see the same thing with bile, meaning acid or acid-based food coming into the first part of the small intestine. And that allows this transformation. That's the pitta part, right? So that's what allows the transformation to the food, especially the fats, the lipids, to be broken up in your body to be able to absorb those in your small intestine. The first part of that small intestine, the most important part, first 10 inches or so, called the duodenum. So let me go back. On strength training days, you can do either first. You can't, not necessarily. You will not get your same great endurance if you train your upper body first. So let's just say you're doing 5 exercises of upper body work. Let's just say you're doing chest and back and shoulders and bis and tris. That's pretty much going to hit most of it, right? So let's say you're doing an upper body workout. Okay. After you finish that, let's say that takes you a half hour, 40 minutes, your run is not going to be as strong. There's no doubt about it. Your run will not be as strong. You will be physically fatigued from that workout, and you have built up lactic acid in your body. The lactic acid, yes, it pools in the muscles that you just worked, but it moves through your entire body. I mean, it's your circulatory system. You're pumping that through your whole body, okay? So yes, it stays in those muscles for a while, but then it moves through your body. So I can't agree with that one. You still need to work your priority. What I'm trying to say is, and try to give you tips along the way, always work whatever your priority is. If your priority is to, again, run a 5K, well, then just make sure that you can run those 3.1 miles or so adequately, and that if you need to, then you might want to do that first in your workout. Again, it depends on your priority. If your priority is body fat loss, for sure, you're going to be doing that metabolic strength training first. And again, lots of great metabolic strength training workouts. We are in the works with partnering with an amazing organization. You will hear the secret details coming up in just a week or two. Hopefully, I'll be able to share a little bit more about that, but we are pretty excited. Okay, so the next one is this, number 5. On lower body strength days, lift weights first. On lower body strength days, lift weights first before cardio. And I would say, again, if we are going back to priorities, for sure, strength training, lifting your lower body should be done always first. And the only time it would not would literally be if you were doing a longer day for endurance-based work. So when I was training, the most I would ever do, I ran cross country, I ran longer races. There's no doubt about it. But that was in my youth. That was back in high school. So when I look at that though, the most I train for now is to do a sprint triathlon. And I like that just because it's cross-training. It's fun. I don't do any big major workouts. But when I start getting more specific for sprint triathlons, on my run bike days, I don't do strength training first. But on the other days, yes, that's absolutely, I will do my strength training first. And I don't necessarily split up my legs, my lower body, just to do a lower body day. A lot of people do. I don't have an issue with it. I mean, here's the thing. If you're training 5 days a week, 4 or 5 days a week, you can do split body parts. It's okay. I mean, if you're doing 2 days a week, you should really work your full body twice a week to even 3 times a week. For people who work out more days a week, absolutely, you can do a split. People ask me all the time, is it okay to do a split? Yes, it's okay to do a split. You just have to work out 4 or 5 days a week, and then you're able to split up those body parts if you want. Nothing wrong if you want to do an upper body, lower body day off, upper body, lower body, and then like intervals or longer distance cardio the next day. I mean, the truth is this. If you're giving me 4 to 5 days of workouts, I'm happy almost anything as long as it's a safe training program. Like, more power to you. I mean, you should be proud of that. I'm thrilled that you're doing that. So, no, I'm excited about that. But yes, for the most part, lower body strength training days, always lift the weights first, because if you run first, if you do your cardio first, you're going to fatigue your legs. You will get some lactic acid buildup. There will be some crossover from aerobic to anaerobic, and it absolutely will affect your legs, especially interval training. We're really talking about steady state, which is just kind of keeping your heart rate at 110, 120 for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I see way too many people doing that, and then they do their workout. No, absolutely not. Do that after your weight training. get in the crucial work. I mean, work those anaerobic muscle or the anaerobic fast twitch muscle fibers first while they're fresh. And then do your steady state cardio. That's not going to really suffer. So definitely do that afterwards, especially if you're just looking for overall health and body transformation. Weights first, certainly legs, and then cardio. Absolutely. Okay. Number 6 is this. If your goal is just general fitness, do either first, but maybe start with the one you like the least. Interesting. So I'm going to debate this point just a bit because I like how they put that last line in. So if they just started with, if your goal is just general fitness, do either first, right? So I disagree with that. And I just gave you the answer why. And that is because it is much more important to work your fast twitch muscle fibers, especially as you age, because naturally you start to lose fast twitch muscle fibers, which you lose the ability to really like sprint, move quick, react quickly, fall prevention, like all of these things. You start to lose fast twitch muscle fibers. You need to keep those. There's a reason why we love burpees, right? Like you need to keep those. So you want to be able to, for sure, do your strength training first, okay? And your cardio second. Cardio is the easier of the two. If we're really just talking about, listen, I'm going to get on a treadmill, I'm going to get on an upright bike, I'm going to get on a rowing machine, and I'm just going to move my body for 20 minutes of cardio. Great. But do that afterwards. I mean, really, because even if you're a little bit more fatigued doing that, you still get the benefit. You actually even get more benefit. Like you don't have to work as hard because you still get the same stimulus. Your body doesn't know the stimulus if you're running at 5.0 or 5.5. It knows how hard that's working for the heart and lungs. And you're working your cardiovascular system. Remember, you're working your heart, right? So look at your beats per minute. It doesn't really matter as much about necessarily how fast you're running. Okay. One thing I'll add though too is if you're doing interval training, especially too, I like that after the workout. So, honestly, I want to make this super simple for today, like big takeaways. If you want to transform your body or overall general fitness, do your metabolic weight training first, meaning do 2, 3, or 5 exercises in a row, okay? Then run through that circuit again. So 2 exercises in a row, 3 exercises in a row, superset, triset, or a circuit. Run through them. Rest, you'll do it again, maybe 2, 3 times total. Okay. After your workout, you'll do 5 intervals or you'll do 8 intervals, whatever you have planned. And that's great. Or instead of the intervals, you'll do your cardio session, which might be 20 minutes on an upright bike, 30 minutes on an upright bike, whatever works for you. So that will be done almost always after your weights unless you are training for an endurance-based event. So if I'm training for a sprint triathlon, typically, I'll have cardio days, and I'll just be doing cardio on those days. And that's the other thing I want to share with you. Some people want to do a little bit of mix of endurance and their weight training. I mean, if you're doing steady state cardio and you're doing it for a longer period of time, like 30, 40 minutes, that should be its own. It can really be its own day. Honestly, you don't need to do weight training first and then that. That's too much of a workout. You can just pick another day and do that. Honestly, keep your workouts to 40 minutes or less. You really don't need more than that. You honestly don't. And if you start to do more than that, it has to be for a specific reason because you start to overtrain at that point, especially if you're doing, like I said, 4 or 5 days a week. You want to be able to make sure that you're keeping up with your sleep, your nutrition, all of those things go together. Okay, but here's the caveat. They said this: if your goal is just general fitness, do either first, but maybe start with the one you like less. Okay, so I agree with that. That's the other caveat is like, I just need to get people moving their body. So if someone says to me, listen, I don't like to work out unless it's a group class, even though I don't love a lot of group classes because they're doing 1,000 squats and 1,000 lunges and it's just so much repetitive motion. I say, okay, like just be careful, be safe, use your form, stop if you're overreaching, you're pushing too hard, and good to go. So that's the truth. The truth is this: you need to do whatever is going to keep you consistent, at least in the beginning. It's also one of the reasons why, though, having a personal trainer is, it's money well spent. It really is, because the personal trainer, you're there. You're under their watch. They're going to make you do what you need to do, even if you don't like it. That's part of having a personal trainer. That's part of what makes it so great. It's also part of why classes can be good too, because, well, hey, you're right next to the next person. You can't just stop. They're going to look at you like, hey, why aren't you doing the workout? So, it's one of those things that there's a little bit of a catch-22. Even though it's not ideal to necessarily do your cardio first, you should be doing some cardio. Then maybe we do it first, we do our weight training after. It's not ideal, but if it gets you doing both, and I'm good with that. I really am. So it always comes down to consistency over everything. You can have the best workout plan in the world based on the absolute specific science to get you the results that you want. But if you don't do it and you're not consistent with it, it's not going to get you the results. And getting results and transforming your body is simply putting in the work over a period of weeks and months and years. And then all of a sudden, overnight, you've transformed your body. So that's really what it's all about. Hopefully today's podcast was helpful. Always love reviewing what all of these personal training certifications have to say. A lot of great ones out there. Again, if you're looking to become a personal trainer, I started with ACE. I really did. But other great ones out there as well. National Academy of Sports Medicine, American College of Sports Medicine, and the National Strength and Conditioning Association are the big three that I typically recommend and refer to. So hopefully this was helpful. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, if it was beneficial, please do feel free to share this show with anyone you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.